We're here at the Bahia Yacht Club. Special event, AutoDesignO. What is AutoDesignO? It's some of the leading designers in the country looking at how they see the cars, what they look at, angles different, and how you're going to drive these cars in the future and what they're going to look like when you're putting wax on, wax off. Let's come inside and check out AutoDesignO.
As you know, we're going to first lead off with Mazda, and we're going to take a little break after that, and then we're going to reconnect with Philip Lund from Neuralize, and he's going to tell us about some exciting new design technology. And then we're going to be following up with Bill Baranco from AutoVision RCD, and he's going to tell us a little bit more about the industry as well.
Super. So without further ado, John, if I can shoo you off with the promise that the music above us will stop. John's going to trade mics with Julian. Julian Montousse is design manager at Mazda, and that is not just Mazda North America, is it, Julian?
Well, the title I'm attached to MNO, which is Mazda North America, but I spend a lot of time in Hiroshima.
Yeah, how much time in Hiroshima?
I've been at Mazda 6 years, so it's almost 4 years total in Hiroshima. Which you don't know, who do you belong to. At one point, you're looking at Japan being like, this is, my primary employer. But a lot of back and forth. Usually we do short assignment. A few weeks I can extend it, but you always come back anyway for like a week to do your expense report and so on. So you have to do it.
There's never any getting around the expense report.
Exactly, you have to, and do it from Japan in Japanese is quite tricky, so you have to come back do it here.
And of course, Hiroshima is Mazda's world headquarters. The location of that world headquarters is literally behind a hill, where those buildings were mostly shielded from 70 years ago, the atomic blast. But this is the city of the Atomic Peace Park, and probably some of the best food in all of Japan, which is saying something.
No, it's pretty insane. I mean, you go to Hiroshima, and then the first thing you do, you go to the Peace Park, and you do have that weight, because it kind of, you have this feeling this is a very heavy place. And right now, we call it the Peace Park. A lot of people go down there to find peace. And Mazda kind of sprang back, obviously after, what happened 70 years ago, to build the rotary engine and, many cars along the way. And I think, you go down there and you do feel there is a certain proud to really spring back from a situation that was, quite difficult, and now I think Mazda really owns the town. We even have a Zoom Zoom Stadium where they you have like many shows of baseball and football and so on.
And is it correct that is it the Hiroshima Carp? Is that the baseball team?
Yeah, it is. It is. Yeah. No, it is.
Well, and apparently that's a prestigious thing to be called in Japan, is the Carp.
Yeah.
Julian, you and I have been lucky enough to work together in the past, and so I know a little bit of that background. But before we get into talking about what you're doing these days at Mazda, can you tell us how an ex-motocross riding Frenchman with a very aerodynamic haircut has come to be mostly in charge of design at Mazda in North America?
I mean, it's a long story, but when I was growing up, my dad was a printer for Formula One, race team for Williams Renault. So I kind of grew up being on big part of each team going around the world. And then I had to leave France, and I wanted to do something else than what I knew. So after graduating, I took a job from, for GM in Detroit. And it was, again, very eye-opening. The way, we'll design will be very different than we'll do in Europe. Europe will be much more focused on the concept, and then the Americans will be much more focused on the gesture of the car.
What do you mean by the gesture?
When we judge design, in Europe, we'll look into the detail, how is the car, and even the interior especially, is functioning, it's serving a specific purpose, rather it's for you to drive in a very intricate streets in Paris. And with the Americans, you get to GM, and then you study design 10 feet away from the model. to look at the overall picture and what is that message telling you, which what we call is the overall gesture.
Are you saying our cars only look good if you stand back 10 feet?
No, well, it's a different approach, but it taught me a lot about proportion, and I worked a lot with Chevrolet and then Camaro. I was developing the interior of the Camaro concept and production, and to work in such a political car in a way, because there's a lot of politics attached to Camaro, but I learned a lot about American history. Obviously, we all look at the 1969 design of the Camaro, and how can you refresh that design, make it, update it, more appealing, but yeah, you don't want to lose the core DNA of that car.
And you went from Detroit then to 5350, or General Motors California North Hollywood Advanced Studio, right?
Exactly. I moved from Paris to Detroit, and I think I was getting either very white and skinny, and the head guys of the studio was like, what about going to California, to test
because
the
you were white
lifestyle.
and skinny.
Well, I came in with a lot of colors at the time, and Detroit was actually quite heavy. It was a not difficult time from design standpoint, but the lifestyle of living in Detroit was a little bit tough. But yet it was actually another project for the Acadia, the GMC Acadia, that brought me to the studio in California.
Now, in California, you did both exterior and interior, but
Sure.
One of your last projects there was the interior of a small Cadillac that became a show car. Is that correct?
Exactly. At the time, most of the focus was on Cadillac, and the fact that we were in California, we were on the front line of luxury and sophisticated taste. So one of the last tasks was to work on Cadillac, that small car that was shown in LA a few months after I left.
Those of you, by the way, that are familiar with Anne Asensio, who also has a French background, know that Julian's become quite Americanized in the sense that he can actually say Cadillac
Cadillac
instead of Cadillac.
Cadillac, yeah.
Let's fast forward now. You've spent almost half a decade in Hiroshima.
Yeah.
You're back here in Orange County. I think this month Mazda has released the first full month's sales figures from the new MX-5,
Yep.
and I think it's the highest level of sales for that vehicle in more than 11 years.
Yep.
What were some of the challenges of designing that vehicle, particularly the interior?
Well, the MX-5, you are, part of this historic, development, and it's one of the car where, even at Mazda, we decided this car we're going to do it for ourselves, which is a very different approach than any other cars. A lot of the cars we have to make a car that can suit, all kinds of demographic, and when Mazda decided to do the MX-5, all of a sudden that become the halo product of the company, in which Mazda is going to concentrate all of their ideas on how to make that car better, which means that they may not listen to what product planning wants to do with the car. They're just going to listen to driving dynamics.
Nobody ever listens to product planners.
Well,
you should
we
know
have
that,
a lot
Julian.
of back and forth, but it was a very daunting task to work for that car. But the objective was obviously to make that car exceptional in the way you drive, and especially how can we connect you with that vehicle.
And from an interior design standpoint, how do you connect the driver to the vehicle, other than the obvious? I mean, they're connected through the seat and the steering wheel, but it's much more than that.
We play a lot with the psychology of the driver, and when you sit in the car, there needs to be this dialogue, but there needs to be this effect of being balanced and in tune with the car. For about 6 years, I've been working with the engineer to make sure that the cockpit right in front of you is symmetrical around the driver axis, not in the the driver center of the car, which allows you to feel perfectly connected with the car in a balanced manner. And most of the car today, you have from plan view either more of kind of a banana shape, or different plan view that makes you always a little bit off center.
Literally feeling as if you're off to the left.
Exactly, a little bit, and it's a real engineering debate to make sure that you find a perfect symmetry around the driver axis. There is a lot of components, the ducking, we've got crossguard beam, we've got all kinds of of component again behind what we call the A-side surfaces that usually is forcing you to get an offset between right and left.
Now, this is certainly a car that has to be sold in right-hand drive markets, so that's a doubly complex task.
Exactly. We need to have a symmetrical door from right to left. We don't have the luxury of doing it like BMW. They have the money, to have asymmetrical doors. For us, we have two markets, from right to left. So even though the design of the cockpit and the IP is asymmetrical, obviously the door themselves have to be symmetrical, which is a huge challenge for design.
The car, we're lucky and thankful to Mazda, is right outside. After our discussion, we're going to get a break, and people will be able to get over and to see what Neuralize has got in the demonstration room next door. But the new MX-5 is also here. Can you give us an example of one or two things we could go down and take a look at that would show this symmetry to the driver?
The symmetry to the driver. So when you sit in it, kind of pay attention to how is the dash being structured and designed, which is again perfectly symmetrical around the driver axis. We also did a different way to approach. Usually you design an exterior and an interior, kind of separate two elements. In this case, we're trying to get a lot of the exterior body surfacing wrapping around the door and making you again that feeling of being part of the outside. A little bit of when you're riding a motorcycle, you have part of that fairing in which you can interact with your own skin. When you're in an MX-5, you're driving, you've got all of that body color that's coming into the interior and connecting all the way to the car in front of you. So it's a very different, different way to approach that frontier between exterior and interior. What it allows you to do is also, in terms of graphic, to lower the center of gravity of the entire interior. Just because you've got, instead of having that much black on the on the door, you basically graphically divided all the mass.
So you lower the visual
you
center
lowered,
of gravity
exactly,
for the car.
Exactly. Yeah.
This car was designed together with Mazda North America Studio and Hiroshima? Simultaneous work?
Exactly. We started to do the model here. Obviously, it's always a competition when even Frankfurt Studio, Hiroshima Studio, and then M&AO, we're all competing, and at the end, one design being picked to move forward. And we are going through this kind of drastic kind of human factor filter. And those guys in Hiroshima, they do that exercise where they blindfold themselves, and where everything, all the components have to be perfectly placed. And this is something that most of other companies will not go that far, but Mazda is actually extremely focused on allowing the perfect economics of its component. To make sure that when you're driving and performing, the section of the rim is perfect. The location of the shifter is perfect, like falls right into where you want to have it. The heights of the armrest as well. So all of those are always in contradiction to design. We both have to fight to get what we want. But at the end, the car drives amazing.
I made the mistake of asking Jacob, who's here from Mazda PR today, to explain Kodo design, because to some of our audience it will be new, and of course he reminded me that it has existed since 2010. But for those of us that aren't familiar with that word and with that design philosophy, can you tell us first, how is Kodo spelled?
Kodo is K-O-D-O, and obviously Kodo emerged from Japan, from Maeda-san, who's our chief designer. And I remember even the first time I went to Hiroshima, he explained to me Kodo, because at the time I didn't even fully understand exactly the meant. And he always carry a knife within his pocket. And when you twist the blade, the tension in the fold of that blade is what you call basically Kodo. It's the tension within, a piece of metal that you will bend from right to left in opposite direction, which is different than BMW, which is more of a flame surfacing, even though they...
Care to demonstrate?
Well, actually, this one, I don't think I'll be able to bend it. It'll be like a bit more... If the blade was a bit more flexible from right to left, the core, fold tension is what we call Kodo. And yeah, this one, I'm sorry, I won't be able to bend it.
Sorry, it's too short.
It's a little bit too short,
I didn't bring my sword.
But basically, when you apply that type of surfaces into the car, it gives you real dynamism, this expression of speed, which is kind of a stylistic approach. And then the next level is how do you get that same philosophy into the interior? So we still put exterior number one as the driving force of the design. And then interior is more of a submissive, in which we'll look at proportionally how those two entities are coming together in one expression, which is a little bit what we did on the MX-5. When you look at some of the body panel on the inside, they're both mimicking what you have on the exterior. So both of them are merging into one single entity, one gesture. Instead of having, you look at a BMW, you've got an amazing exterior design.
Maybe.
And in an interior, they went into something a lot more, static, closer to, chasing the best craftsmanship, even closer to what we do in furniture design. So you don't have that flow of shapes between exterior and interior.
And as you pursued Kodo from an interior standpoint and an exterior standpoint, and you had all the studios working together, once a primary exterior was chosen, interior then worked together on synchronously on that whole development, right? And was this happening across the Pacific then?
In terms of the process, you mean,
Yeah.
like the strategy?
Yeah.
No, exactly. The message of Kodo kind of spread, but everyone had their own kind of vision, towards what would Kodo be, especially on the interior. Interior is a lot more of a nerdy, approach, because you have to put together like 400 parts together. And, the problem is like maybe Europe will follow Kodo as a speed into the surfacing, into the interior, knowing that you never have a lot of real estate to apply that surfacing because you've got a bunch of components coming together. So it's more like a product design assignment. So we had, at M&A, find another way to express Kodo through the interior.
So you were working for the North American studio, yet you were domiciled in Hiroshima during this period.
Yeah.
And so was there daily interaction, and how did that work?
Usually we will start the model, here at M&A for about 6 years. It's some kind of a game to trust. The first model, Hiroshima is looking at, okay, we'll get, this will be one proposal. And as you win it, the next time they're a little bit more giving and more trusting. And now we get to the point where Hiroshima is fully trusting us to develop the first phase of production program. And production program come from K1 to K8.
Even if that meant you yourself had to go work in Hiroshima?
For the past 6 years, it was the understanding, for me to, if the design was chosen, every time we have a new design, it's always a new competition, and whoever wins the design have to go to Hiroshima and go through the whole production phase, in which you have
That's
to...
a lot of okonomiyaki, by the way.
It's a lot of sake, okonomiyaki, obviously, but the work, the amount of work that we do in Hiroshima is insane,
What was a typical day?
It's probably when you have a meeting kind of at 7 p.m., that meeting is going to last at least 2 hours, because you usually never finish before 9. It's the basics where design is always under pressure to deliver. And, again, all those gates from K1 to K8, it's basically 6 weeks to go from one gate to another. design is responsible to always deliver a set of data that are close to be producible. So basically the spotlight is on us, so we have to work around the clock.
Pardon me, and right now, Kodo in its highest form is in the MX-5, or since CX-3 is on its way out now following MX-5, is the highest form of Kodo CX-3?
They're all Kodo. I would say that the MX-5, because of its size, it had to be more contained, and the surfacing is a little bit more kind of roundish, just because of the iconic approach of the vehicle. Now CX-3, the movement is a lot more upright. When you look at the vehicle, it looks like it's about to bounce on top of you. I wouldn't say one is on top of each other. We keep exploring, like the two surface qualities.
Now, under Franz von Holzhausen, who's now at Tesla, and has designed the Model S. Under Franz von Holzhausen, Mazda show cars had begun to be seen with surfacing that we all called wrinkled bed sheets. I forget what it was called.
Nagare.
Okay,
Nagare,
so it was abandoned. It got the knife, so to speak.
Totally.
And that the Kodo language was developed together with Hiroshima and Maeda, I'm assuming, while Derek Jenkins was at North America. So you have now come in and then picked up with this philosophy. Is it tough to take on a philosophy that had its birth before you were at the organization?
It's tough, but at the same time, the environment we're in keeps evolving. And right now we have that new phase of technology in which we cannot really rest only on styling. You need to kind of make sense. And we talked earlier about this power of why, and all the designers working with me. So that before you put the pen down, you really have to ask yourself, what is your target? What's the ultimate objective? And rather it's exterior and interior, and everyone today, to a certain level, is about how good are you at faking premium. Which supplier you're going to pick to mimic wood or real metal, fake metal, or even leather. We even put scent into the leather to make it feel like it's real leather. Every manufacturer is looking at this. So for an interior designer, you have to go beyond this and go about what is the clear message that you really want to showcase through your design. Obviously all of this kind of like PR and cost issue will come along the way, but instead of being damaged, from this attribute to start with, you have to be as clean as possible with a clear vision. And it's tough for a designer, because especially interior, you have all that wave of, pressure and engineering constraint that, kill creativity.
And so that's happening throughout the Mazda design organization. And I know that in that organization you've mentioned that there's a German studio in Frankfurt, which is an advanced satellite studio.
As well, yeah.
And then the North American studio, which is more than just a satellite studio at this point. Is that right?
We're still advanced, but now we're very much involved into production program.
Okay.
Yeah, and we have also R&D attached to us. So a lot of like the new concept from HMI, or your infotainment, we can prove it, with design close by.
And so if at times the Mazda studio at 1421 Reynolds here actually leads on programs, not just in advanced vehicles if they're chosen, but also in the production of those, is that right? Production design.
Exactly. We can't, talk about it, the last one we just did, but the previous project is the one we did lead that program, yeah.
And so can we take that as a sign that maybe at some point you also will have greater responsibilities?
It's possible. It's possible. I mean,
if you do okay up here today in front of the public.
There's a camera. They may transmit it to Japan, but no, I think it's always a link of trust with Japan to make sure that when we start an assignment, we are going to deliver a high level of design. And every time, Japanese is not like, you don't build up and, they close their eyes and know you're going to do a good job. Every single new program is an assignment where you have to prove yourself again. And this is not something, when I was working at GM, it felt like when you started to gain that trust, you could start to kind of lay back.
This is how we get Malibus.
So it was, but yeah, Mazda is a very small company, and every single product counts. It has to be a success. And there is that same amount of pressure for every single program that we tackle.
You're now in design leadership, and you're ascending. How do you, as a design leader, spur creativity in the studio that reports to you, in the team that you work with?
Well, usually, we talked about this power of why, but then you have to, you need like different mechanism to unlock the mind. And actually, I'm applying something I learned when I was at school a long time ago. And one of my teachers was called Michel Armand. He was the head design leader of Citroën in the 60s. And he will always tell me, just let the pen draw the answer for you, which means don't try to, overthink it. At one point, if you want to, design something new, you have to let the pen wander. And everybody understood what it meant. And, basically don't try to project something that looks nice. Just let the pen wander, and your mind, through crossing your line, your mind's gonna, recognize different volume that you did not intend it to be. And, those sketches, like, you won't show it to anybody because they don't look like anything. But by letting the pen wander on the page, your mind picked up those new ideas. And it's, that type of mechanism that I, try to explain to the designer, like, don't try to overthink it, to really let the pen wander, and we can look at all the sketches. Don't try to make it nice for me or for management just yet. Just, completely let yourself free, and then we can recognize a new thematic for interior or exteriors.
It's interesting because a lot, in fact, in every single weekly automotive news we get, the top management of Fiat Chrysler is trying to merge with somebody. Based on the fantasy that that creates a more efficient company. Yet Mazda is perhaps one of maybe the world's smallest independent global car company. And your sales in the last 2 or 3 years are up very, very significantly. Mazda 3 sales are up. I think it's about 10,000 unit a month car. Mazda 6 is becoming a 6,000 unit a month vehicle. CX-5 sells really well. The new Miata is setting records. At the same time, Toyota struggles, right? Toyota is down. Camry prices and volume are down. The trucks are down. As an independent, what are the advantages and what are the challenges that you see from a design standpoint?
Yeah, and definitely if you're smaller, you're just quick, at executing new ideas, and even just choosing design, like we usually have like a table of 4 in management. We show a property to the board of directors. They take a decision, one single decision, and we just have to execute that design, which, if I remember from GM or Ford, it's going to take you much longer to approve this. And it's the same from engineering standpoint. We have a much smaller budget, but everyone is extremely proactive, and everyone is very high skill to what they do, and they work very, very hard. There is this kind of common understanding every time I talk to a Japanese that when you realize it, like Japan is, I think, maybe the 4th number 1 GDP in the world. When you look at the size of that country, like there is that understanding, like for them to sustain against China, they have to work harder and more efficiently than anybody else. And that kind of momentum when you integrate that studio is pretty insane to witness.
What should we look for, and you can't talk about the models, but as Kodo evolves, and as Mazda North America's and your own role evolves, what should we be looking for in terms of gesture in future Mazda products?
Mazda is going up market, I mean, if you see like through the different product that we put out, you know, compared to again like 6 years ago.
Now, upmarket means changing segments or just getting premium price within the segment?
Well, premium price and premium product. You know, we kind of demonstrated through like the CX-5. You know, we now sold more than 1 million CX-5 in a few years. I mean, for Hiroshima, such a small company, like 1 million CX-5 around the world is crucial. But it showcased that even though the price go up a little bit compared to what the customer used to know, the product is a lot better. You know, crash test, you know, all the safety regulation. Mazda is always the best ranking. Interior, we've got a lot of great quality, you know, craftsmanship, and exterior styling have to showcase sophistication and premium. You know, like the next step for Kodo is to be nevertheless more and more directional. You know, as you get a better engineering, you can, you know, have a car, you know, with a lot more stance, a lot more trapezoid stance within the road, same way like the Germans doing. So if we can get a platform, you know, as good as a BMW with a Mazda, you know, Kodo expression on it, then you get, you know, something pretty insane. Yeah.
Something to look forward to. Small but mighty. Congratulations on your progress so far, both as a brand and you yourself from the son of the Formula One printer. We probably have time, if it really is a question and not a statement, we probably have time for one or two from the audience, particularly if you're a pretty woman.
Thank you. I've been trying to put my hand up the whole time.
You have been putting it up.
I know.
I've been
I
trying.
wanted you to see there was a question. I was like, I'll just do this, and then he'll know I'm going to ask you a question.
Go right ahead.
So, I'm Alicia Webb. I'm a freelance journalist, but I'm writing a story for Awards about this. I'm wondering, now that the cars often connected in a variety of ways, and obviously that changes the way that you design your console. You know, how has the rise of the connected car, which is not a Schwarzenegger movie, how has that impacted you as a designer? How does that change the way you work on design?
Well, like connectivity is again the number one why buy, you know, for our next customer, and that's a huge question because Mazda, as you know, it is driving matters, and we have to include more and more connectivity, knowing that, you know, people want to enjoy driving, but when you're like 10 or 20 miles per hour on the 405 going back home, you may want to do something else in the car.
So stay here later.
I'll stay here later. But, you know, within Mazda, we have to search within our DNA. And, you know, we're based on Kodo, but Mazda overall DNA is called Jinbaitai, which is the...
You're going to say that again, right?
Jinbaitai is the connection between you and the car. And the sensation of pleasure that you do feel when you drive. And, you know, even though we put a lot of technology inside the car, we're going to have Apple Play, you know, CarPlay inside the car, Android Auto going to be part of infotainment. We still have to extract some of driver-centric application in front of the driver that Mazda can own. You know, like everyone is on an iPhone today. That's a battle that we basically cannot win. But the driver-centric application is something that Mazda can still, you know, have a share. And by driver-centric, you have navigation. Like navigation, why would we have navigation on a 2D screen where it's projected, you know, in a 360 view around you? You have what we call the eyelid capture, which basically the car knows exactly where you're looking at, and the car can correct your vision angle, say, this is where you have to look if you're on a course and get the best trajectory or your braking zone. You have also augmented realities in order for you to be even more connected to what's coming. Augmented realities. And augmented realities is kind of what everyone experienced through gaming. So all of this is coming into the car. We in the future we will have it into the car. You know, for safety reason, but also in order to perform. But all those applications, they are digital application that can be extracted away from your social application, and they can still become Mazda. You can put a a Mazda interface graphic, to protect this for Mazda instead of your Android Auto or CarPlay from Apple.
Wait, this is so you guys can still keep some of the value added, basically.
It-
I mean, there's a huge fight now between
Yeah.
tech companies and the automakers on
For
who's
sure.
going to provide the value added. So these are things that Mazda can bring to the car is really.
Exactly. No, exactly. And there is like deeper connection I can't talk about, but that we're already putting in place within the architecture to make you feel even more connected with the car to like different level.
It was a great question. Time for one more. Not pretty and not a woman, but it's okay.
Bob Saber, former GM senior scientist
Yes.
at a radio
Yes.
show now. How much angst did you go through to place that screen, that ubiquitous screen, up on the dashboard, which seems to be the latest, I wouldn't say a fad, it seems like to be a compulsion to put those things there, and it seems to be out of kilter with the rest of the car.
Yeah. It's a very good question. We've got product planning telling us people want the iPhone in the car, and when someone get in the car and they see a flat screen that's decoupled away from the dashboard, it's somehow look technology. For some people, it doesn't look integrated and looks like almost like the old Garmin, component that you can take away. But for a lot of customers, the appeal is that you have some kind of a smart device inside the car. The other thing is it allows us to push the surface of the dash lower to get everything a lot more lightweight, visually lightweight, instead of having those really high dash to cover the entire screen like on the Mazda 3. Now it's a lot lower, which again goes with that whole philosophy of speed, acceleration, and lightweight.
It was a great question. Schedule-wise, and before we officially thank Julian, and then also make he and Jacob available to some of you for more exclusive interview and discussion, we're going to take a half-hour break now. One of the powers every year of Design Forum is the diversity of sponsors that we have. And it's sponsorship that means they're here with exciting product and with exciting services. We've got Ferretti here with a beautiful yacht, which everyone is encouraged to visit. We want you to explore while you're here today. There's fabulous fashion and models around, besides just the beautiful location, not to mention the technology that is in the room next door. And Bill Baranko, one of our sponsors, from one of our sponsor companies, will also be speaking later. So at this point, we're going to break. We've got a half hour till we come back here, at which time I think John and Chris Woodyard from USA Today will be having a discussion. So if I may, can I ask you all to give a big hand to Mazda for headlining today, and for Julian for joining us.
Just a pleasure. Great job. Thank you.